All gifts entered into Denari are entered as a batch, so that's where we'll begin. There are several different types of gifts: credit card gifts, electronic fund transfer or EFT gifts, and checks or cash. Denari has the ability to automatically create gift records for credit cards and EFTs that reoccur periodically, like monthly. But for now, we'll focus on those gifts that are entered manually by a staff person. Usually those gifts come in the form of checks or cash, although you do have the ability to enter a credit card gift manually, and we'll talk about that later. Let's pretend that you have 10 checks that you want to enter today. First, you'll go to the Gifts Pledges link on the left, and then click on Gift Batching. Here you see a list of the batches that have already been entered. Click Add New to create a new batch or container for your gifts. I'm just going to go ahead and click on a batch that's already here. Notice that Denari fills in the gift date field for you. It offers you today's date, but you can change that if you wish. All of the gifts in the batch will use that date. Denari doesn't record the check date. Later, when you run reports based on gift date, this is the field that Denari will use. The batch code field can be anything you want it to be or be left blank. Some users put the reference number from the bank deposit slip there, if there is one, to tie a deposit to the batch. Some enter the initials of the person entering the gifts. If you have multiple people who do gift entry, so that there are questions later, if there are questions later, you'll know who is familiar with that batch. Denari automatically fills in this field for an automated pledge gift or online community gift. The control total is required and offers a simple check to help you remember to enter all of your gifts for this batch. It's not foolproof, but just adds a small checkpoint. To use it, you first need to add up all the gift amounts you intend to add to this batch. So in our example, we'll add up the 10 checks. Let's say that each check is for $100, so the total of all 10 checks is $1,000. That's what we'll enter into the control field. You don't need a dollar sign or 0 decimal points unless they're required. The notes field can also be left blank or used for anything that you want to use it for. It can give you or someone else in the future clues about what type of gifts are in the batch. The bank profile field can be used if you have multiple bank accounts with different types of gifts going to various accounts. For example, you may put foundation gifts in one account with all other deposits going to different accounts. You can set up the values that will appear in this drop-down by clicking the plus sign and then Bank Profiles. Create as many records as you need here. If you're only using one bank account, you can go to the gear icon and then Preferences to select the default bank profile. Denari will then automatically fill in this field when you create a new batch with the default that you've selected. And we'll talk about ignore warnings later. Now that you've prepared the container for your gifts, it's time to begin to enter them. Do that by clicking on the gift entry link over in the quick actions section on the right. This takes us inside the batch container, and here you see a list of gifts that are already in this batch. We'll click Add New to create a new gift record. The first thing we need to do is select the donor. If we know the donor's account number, we can enter that into the field and hit the Tab button on our keyboard. Denari will grab the donor's name and address information so that we can check to be sure we have the right person. If you don't know the account number, you can click the search link on the right. The search window will open where you can search for and select the correct donor. If you click the search button, you have two options for the search. By default, you will see the universal search field. Type a name or any other information into that field and hit enter. Denari will return all records that reference that name. You might find that there are too many results, so you have the option to select the advanced search option and search specifically for a last name, first name, address, account number, etc. Once the donor has been selected, Denari will put pertinent information into the yellow box below. If the donor is not already in your data, you can click Add New or New Donor on the right to create a new name record. Once you hit Save, however, Denari does not automatically fill in the account number in the gift form. You'll still need to click the question mark to select the new name here in the gift form. On the right, you will notice a box with some other information. One of those is receipt number. Denari creates a unique receipt number for each gift record. That number will show up in various places in Denari and is the identifier for this specific gift. Let's look now at the letter body field. The default Denari thank you receipt is an 8.5 by 11 page. The bottom 2/3 of that page shows the financial information related to the gift. The top 2/3 is a letter body that can be created by you. Denari fills in things like the date, name and address, and salutation, and will plug in whatever letter body you select here. You can create them ahead of time by going to the plus sign and then letters. Again, this is just the letter body that you are selecting here, not the entire receipt format. The letter field here means that you can select a different letter for each gift if needed. For example, you might want a special letter for donations made at a recent fundraising banquet. You might have a different letter for donations made as a result of a mail campaign. Or you might just want a standard letter for those who donate to you on a regular basis regardless of the event. You can control which gift gets which letters on the receipt. There are 3 notes fields available. You can put anything you want into any of these. The split notes field, which we'll see in a few minutes, resides with the split. If you have 5 splits in a gift, each split could have its own note if needed. The note, which we also call the gift notes field, usually applies to the entire gift. The PS Notes field is one that is built into the default thank you receipt template. It sits just below the letter body. Anything you enter here will appear on that receipt in that location and therefore can be specific to that donor. Denari gives you the ability to enter a single gift that can be split between funds or pledges, or can be split between charitable and non-charitable portions, etc. For example, a donor may send a check in payment of 2 of their pledges. The check could be for $100, but 50 of that will go to one pledge and 50 to another. Or a donor may purchase a product from you with some of that covering the actual cost of the item and the rest being a donation. The cost portion can be entered as non-charitable and the donation portion entered as charitable. We'll look at this in more detail in a few minutes. When Denari prints the default thank you receipt, it will list the splits along with the total amount of the gift. Technically, there is no limit to the number of splits that can be entered. However, there will be a limit on how many can be printed on the thank you receipt. That is not really a Denari limit, but a space issue on the page. At some point, there are just too many to fit on the page. You may be asking, what is the limit that will fit on the page? That depends on the layout of the page and the size font used, so it's impossible to give you an exact number. However, 4 or 5 or 6 is a good round number. The first field in the details section is called gift split amount. Let's say that a donor has given us a check for $100 and it's not split between anything. We'll enter 100 in that field. It is a one split gift. We don't need to enter a dollar sign or decimals here unless they're necessary. Next, we need to select the fund and the appeal. The fund tells us what the money was raised for, and the appeal tells us what fundraising function generated the donation. These are required fields and are important for tracking gifts later in reports. If you haven't already watched the videos on codes, be sure to do that. The codes are the foundation for understanding and using Denari. Click the search icon to find the values for those fields. The pledge field is where you will link the gift to a pledge. If the donor has an active pledge, Denari displays that in this field. You can click the drop down to select the correct pledge if there are multiple pledges. The field gives you some information about each pledge to help you select the correct one. If the donor has an active pledge, but this gift is not intended as a payment toward that pledge, you can click the drop down here and select Not a Pledge Gift from the list. In the Type field, you will find 4 options. Almost all of your gifts will be hard. That is, they are cash, checks, credit cards, etc., and that's the default for the field. But here are the definitions for the other options. Soft is really a fake gift. It can get used for several things, but there are 2 examples. Someone donates a gift in kind. Let's say it's a computer. Your accountant doesn't really care about this donation unless its value is over a certain amount. But your fundraising person does. That person wants to know that this donor made a donation even if it wasn't a cash type gift. So you can estimate what the computer might be worth and enter that in the split amount field and change the type to soft. Denari will create a record that will show in the donor's gift history page with an asterisk next to it to let the fundraiser see the donation, but the gift will not show up on most of the standardized reports. You can get a list of soft credits using Gift Segmenter, however. Denari will also not print a receipt for this gift because the IRS does not allow nonprofits to establish a value for tax purposes. You can send your donor a hand-typed letter on your letterhead with the date and what was donated for the IRS, or if you have a lot of gift-in-kind type gifts, Denari does have a soft credit letter that you can use. A second example is for a donor who donates to your organization through a third party, like a foundation. The donor gives them the money and they give it to you. Legally, you can't receipt the donor. That's the responsibility of the foundation. But again, the fundraiser wants to know that the donation was made, so you can enter it as a soft credit. You will need to enter 2 gift records, one hard to the foundation and one soft to the donor. A soft credit is also not included in the control total of the batch. So if we have 10 gifts that we are entering today, each for $100, but one of them is a soft credit, the control total will be $900. A soft pledge is similar to soft in that it is a fake gift, but it gets used when the gift is being applied to a pledge. This is sometimes used when child sponsorship, when a parent sends a check as payment on a pledge for a minor in their family who is the real sponsor. The pledge is linked to the minor's name record. It requires that you enter 2 gifts, one hard and one soft. The parent can get a hard credit for the donation, but the child's donation can be soft and applied to the pledge. Finally, a covered gift relates to membership. If you're using that module, it works exactly the same way as a soft pledge, but allows a donor to get membership credit for the donation. Tributes are gifts in memory of. We won't cover the tributes feature here, but you can set up a tribute record ahead of time on the Donors tab and then link the gift to that tribute here. The drop-down shows all of the open tributes. The gift code field can be used for anything you would like. It can be used later as a filter to produce a report. Most of the time you won't need this field, however. You can use other fields like appeals, funds, tributes, etc. as filters for your report, and this just won't be necessary. The charitable checkbox is where you can indicate that this gift is charitable. Unchecking the box, of course, will make it non-charitable. The default thank you receipt will show charitable or non-charitable next to each split. Ignore for stats causes this gift to not be included when Denari calculates things like year-to-date, last gift, first gift, largest gift, etc. for this donor. It's rare that you would use this field. The anonymous checkbox only works with the missionary module. It will remove the donor's name from the reports that missionaries see when they log in through their interface. If you're not using that module, this field will have little functionality for you, although you can get a list of anonymous gifts with Gift Segmenter. And finally, we see the split note that I mentioned earlier that is unique to this particular split. Now, let's back up a little. So far we've entered a one split gift. If this gift is a multiple split gift, you will simply enter the amount of the first split in the split amount field. So let's say that this gift is a $100 gift with two splits of $50 each. We'll put $50 in the split amount field and fill in the other fields for that split. Now we can hit the Add Split button. A new window will open that has the same fields we saw on the main page. Fill in the information here for this second split and click Save when finished. If we want to enter other splits, we can hit the Add Split link at the top of the window and continue. Back on the main page, we now see both splits listed here. We can delete a split by clicking the Delete link, and we can edit the split by clicking somewhere on that row. The window will open, and we can make changes there as needed. Again, hit Save when you're finished. Now you can click the Payment Method drop-down to select a payment type, and you can see there are many choices here. Across from that, you can enter the check number if necessary. Denari has the ability to process a single gift by credit card. You will need to have set up an account through Practical Business Solutions for this to work, and the credit card module needs to be turned on in Denari. Once turned on, you'll see the credit card fields here. Enter the credit card information, then check the little checkbox next to the fields. This serves as a small protection to keep you from accidentally running the credit card before you're ready. Check the box and then click on Save Gift and Process Card Now. Denari will immediately send the credit card information to FrontStream, who will make the transaction. And below is the Premium section. Premiums are gifts given as a reward for a donation, and this section allows you to assign a premium to this donor or gift. Premiums are covered in a separate video, so we won't elaborate here. Now, before we leave the gift record, let me explain default gifts. You will find two buttons on the right, Make Default, and then once the default is made, you'll find a button called Get Default. If you have a donor who usually gives the same amount to the same fund with the same appeal, etc. each month, you may want to set that gift up as a default gift. You do that by first filling in the gift record with all of the information. Then click the Make Default button. Denari will store that as the donor's default. Next month, create a new blank gift record, select the donor in the Name ID field, then click Get Default. Denari will fill in the fields using your saved default record. You can still change the information in the gift record if needed. If the donor's pattern changes, you can simply click Make Default again and overwrite the existing record. If you have more gifts to enter into this batch, you can click the plus sign here at the top. Denari will save the gift record you're on and give you a new blank page. If this is the last gift in the batch, you can now click the batching button on the right. This will take you back out to the main batch screen. At this point, the gifts have not been posted to the donor. If you were to run reports or thank you receipts, these gifts would not be included. The next step in the process is to close the batch. Closing will post the gifts. At the top of the batch page, we see a small table with some information about the batch. One of the columns here currently says remaining. This simply means that the dollar amount of the gifts that we've entered into the batch does not agree with the control total. And in this case, remaining means that the control total is too large. We haven't entered enough gifts into the batch. So we can do one of two things. We can go back into the batch and enter the rest of the gifts, or in this case I'm going to cheat a little bit and I'm going to change the control total so that it matches. And I see that the gift sum is 250, so I'm going to put it in there and I'll click Save. Notice that the column now that said remaining has now changed to balanced and shows me a $0 amount. The close batch button will now appear over here on the right as well. There are other reasons why the close batch button doesn't always appear. If the batch is a credit card or EFT batch, you must first hit the download processor results button, and we don't see that here because this is not a credit card batch. But that downloads the latest information about the transactions from FundStream. Without that, Denari can't update the batch, so it won't let you close it until you've done that. That will be discussed in more detail in the video on credit cards and EFTs. You can go back into the batch whenever needed if the batch is open. Simply hit Gift Entry. That will take you to the list of gifts already entered. Notice that each split is listed on a separate row. At this point, we can click Add New to add more gifts to the batch, or click on one of the existing gifts to edit. Clicking anywhere on one of the splits will put us back into the gift record. We can make changes, hit Save, and then click on Batching again to take us back to the main batch window. Since the batch is now balanced, we can close the batch by clicking the Close Batch button. At this point, we see three new buttons. One is Reopen Batch. Closing and reopening batches is a fairly stressful task on the Denari servers, so you can only reopen batches with fewer than 100 gifts. If you find that you need to open a larger batch, let tech support know and they can do it for you. Once the batch is reopened, you can make changes to the gifts if needed. The second and really third new button is the Receipts button. And if you have e-receipts installed, you will see that button as well. Use these buttons to print thank you receipts. This topic is covered in more detail in a separate video, so we'll stop here. In the Quick Actions section and on the batch screen itself, you will find a number of report links. You'll need to experiment a little to see what they do, but let me point out a couple. First, there is the long and short report. One or the other of these is usually what are used to give to the accountant to reconcile the batch. One gives you more information than the other. On the right, you will find a number of reports that are credit card or EFT related. We'll cover those in more detail in the credit card and EFT video. The final topic here then is ignore warnings. When you close a batch, Denari does some basic checks. It checks, for example, to be sure that the appeal and fund codes on the enclosed gifts are valid and active. It checks to be sure there's a blank profile selected, and it checks to be sure that all of the gifts are linked to a donor. If it finds a problem, it will prevent you from closing the batch and display a link with some information at the bottom of the batch form. That message gives you the receipt number for the gift or gifts with the problem. This is your clue to go back into the batch and correct the problem. But sometimes you may want to close the batch regardless of those problems. For example, it is not uncommon for a donor to call at tax time to let you know that there was a mistake with one of their gifts. You can go to the batch that holds the gift with the problem, reopen it, correct it, then close the batch. However, the gift may have originally been entered months or even years earlier, and you might have closed some or all of the fund codes selected in the gifts in the batch. Now, when you attempt to close the batch, Denari does its check, finds the closed funds, and gives you the error message. It won't let you close the batch. Rather than reactivate all of the fund codes, you can simply change the Ignore Warnings field to Yes. You are telling Denari to ignore the warnings and go ahead and close the batch. This concludes gift entry. If you have any questions, please contact our tech support staff through the Help button at the top of Denari.